With the current climate and the microscope that has been put on law enforcement and the police force lately, I thought it'd be a really cool idea to do a quick brief video on the history of the police force in the United States of America. But first, let's hit that intro. Hello everyone and welcome. This is the Commotion and I'm Roshan Joshi. And this is Reality Rants. Today, we are going to look at the history of the police force in the United States of America. But first, if you guys like this video, please hit the like button. We see a lot of people are viewing our videos, but not hitting the like button. So please hit the like button. It helps us out a lot. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. And please hit that notification bell to stay up to date with us. If you like any of the music on our page, check out Be The Human. Info is in the description. Alright, getting right into it. So, the history of the police force in the United States. So, the United States has always been a little north and south division. So, we are going to do it that way. We're going to go north, then we're going to go south. In 1635, Boston institutes the first police organization, or policing organization, called the Night Watch. The Night's Watch? Like Game of Thrones? No. The Night Watch. They would have a person volunteer during a certain time or day, and they would be patrolling the area at night. They would be watching the night and making sure that no crime would go on, was the thought behind it. So, like Batman? No, not like Batman. There are a lot of different moralities there. So, right off the bat, and this is funny because most like historic research and records that I looked at, everybody was kind of saying the exact same thing. The system wasn't very efficient. Not a lot of people wanted to do this job. They actually had punishment. There were like punishments for people. Hey, you're punished, now you have to do the night watch. So nobody really wanted to do it. It wasn't a very respectable job. And the people that did volunteer and do it, a lot of records say that they slept a lot and they got drunk all the time, which is, you had to party hard to be able to get that in the history books. But another thing that people would do was they would end up taking a spot or volunteering for a spot and kind of allow their friends to do whatever criminal activities that they were doing. So gambling, prostitution, it always comes back to sex, money, and drugs apparently, but that's what a lot of the people were using the system for. But as cities grew, the Night Watch became very ineffective. There were too many people. Nobody was really doing the job. They had to establish an actual established force. So guess who's back? It's good old Boston. In 1838, Boston instituted a formal police department. The first formal police department established rules, actual stations, and precincts. And New York shortly followed in 1845, and in the 1880s, all American cities had a police force. But going back to Boston, the reason that Boston institutionalized a formal police force is because Boston was the first shipping, commercial center. It was like one of the first big shipping commercial centers was Boston. So rather than start paying people for private protection to protect their properties and their assets, they thought, let's go to the public and have the public help pay for an administration that'll end up protecting our assets. And the big verbiage behind it was the common good. So, little fun fact there. So yeah, once again, in the 1880s, all American cities had a police force now. And this was me kind of going through the north side. So going to the south. In the south, however, economics were not driven by trade, just as it was in Boston. They actually were rooted back a little bit further back. In the south, the economics were very driven off of the slavery system. So back in 1717, the first organized group was called the Slave Patrol. Ridiculous. That was the first organized group to try to establish or enforce any type of laws. But the primary policy and primary policing that these guys would do, I broke down to three things. It's to chase down, apprehend, and return runaway slaves to their owners, to provide a form of organized terror and to deter slaves from revolting, and to maintain and discipline, to maintain a form of discipline for slave workers who are subject for justice outside of the law, and if they violated any of the plantation rules. So basically, if anybody wanted their basic freedom, these people would catch them. They'd physically catch them. They would mentally terrorize them along with physically, so that they would be scarred and be scared to run or leave. And yeah, and then the mental barriers were put up, where they would put up a construct where there was justice outside of the law, which, as we all know, there is no justice outside of the law. It's a hard time getting justice in the law. I'm digressing, but this is why it's called Reality Rants. That was prior and during the Civil War era. After the Civil War, these same exact groups of people who, the slave patrol, who were, their whole entire establishment was to oppress and to contain individuals and take them of their freedom. They converted those groups to the enforcement squad, or enforcing policies. So these same people and these same groups were now enforcing segregation and the disenfranchisement of freed people and former slaves. So, and this continued like many years past, the Civil War. But we'll go back into that in a bit. So, as time went on, police forces focused more on protecting businesses and cities from union organizers and crime. So during this time, essentially, the police were controlled by business owners, politicians. Doesn't sound too different from a certain time era. Oh, I know, but I don't want to digress. So during this time, they were controlled by politicians, business owners, and they were extremely corrupt. Chicago actually had one of the most corrupt police forces in the era. So like that 1920s, 30s, it was pretty corrupted. As Prohibition continued to fail, I say fail because clearly we see how good it did, bringing down crime. In 1912, President Hoover created the Wickersham Commission to assess law enforcement and its impact across the nation. So basically an audit. Yeah, I mean basically an audit, but there was some good that came of it. Of course, they should have drilled a little bit further into it, but now police forces started becoming more established. Officers were appointed via exams rather than via ties, and police were starting to get put on rotation so that they wouldn't be by the same beat in the same businesses, and there was less of a chance that they would get corrupted. But even in these bits of growth, by the 1960s, America had become extremely intolerant to the police brutality that was put under a microscope. That the police brutality towards the citizens, especially during the Civil Rights Movement, all of that was put under such a microscope. And we even view that today, but I don't want to digress. Crime rose in the 70s, and poor political policies were put in play, which really helped that crime rise. And their answer was to embrace a strong and large police force. So with that came some good, but a lot of bad came as well. With this, the police started to target high crime areas of low income areas. When you're going to a specific area and you're continuing to arrest people, the statistic for crime is obviously going to go higher, especially if you're arresting people on low level crimes. But the answer to all of this, they thought, was laws like stop and frisk, and the broken window policies that were out there. So because of things like this, the policies that were put into play, millions of Americans were incarcerated on low-level crime and still are incarcerated because of low-level crimes. And this was all in order to prevent more serious crimes. So if that makes any sense. But yeah, millions of Americans became incarcerated on extremely low-level crimes. And policies like stop and frisk and all of that were reasons. You can just walk down the street, and if you look suspicious, you're getting stopped, you're getting frisked, then it's your own personal life. You're not doing anything wrong. But I don't want to digress. Other than that being targeting, it seems like in history, a lot of times you see the police working for special interests, whether it be organizations that are non-criminal and criminal. And with all that in mind, law enforcement being under such a microscope during this current climate, what do you think? I want to know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think would be better policies that would help the people and law enforcement become more in harmony and them to actually kind of serve people more? In my opinion, I think that if we are making a lawyer have to go 7 years, 4 years through bachelor's, 3 years in law school to defend the law, you should need many years of training and bi-yearly trainings on de-escalations and stuff to be able to enforce the law with a gun. So, my opinion, I think that it should be a very high-level elite job that comes with a lot of responsibilities, but also comes with a lot of repercussions for the mistakes that you make. And you know what you're signing up for. And if you are going out of policy and out of play, criminal charges right there. But I'm digressing. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Once again, this is Reality Rants on the Commotion. I'm Roshan Joshi. Remember, guys, knowledge is power, and stay blessed.
Grinding my whole life.